Did you know that reheating certain foods in your microwave could be creating toxic compounds that damage your brain and increase your cancer risk? I'm not talking about food that's gone bad or that wasn't stored properly. I'm talking about perfectly good food that becomes dangerous the moment you heat it up a second time. And millions of Americans are doing this every single day without having any idea of the harm they're causing to their bodies. And what's worse is that some of these foods are considered healthy and are recommended by nutritionists. But when you reheat them, they transform into something your body was never meant to process. My name is Dr. Rebecca Parker. I've worked as a physician for over 20 years, and today I focus specifically on senior health. And in all these years, I've seen countless patients suffering from conditions that could have been prevented with simple changes in their daily habits. And one of the most overlooked dangers hiding in American kitchens is this practice of reheating certain foods that should never be heated twice. You're not alone if you've been doing this. In fact, most seniors across America have been reheating these foods their entire lives because nobody ever told them the truth. And the food industry certainly isn't going to warn you because it would hurt their bottom line. But your health is what matters here, not their profits. And what I'm about to share with you today could literally save your life or protect you from developing dementia or cancer in the years ahead. Maybe you're someone who cooks a big batch of food on Sunday and reheats portions throughout the week. That's actually a smart strategy for saving time and money, and I encourage that kind of meal planning, especially for seniors who want to maintain their independence in the kitchen. But the problem is that certain foods undergo dangerous chemical changes when they're reheated, and these changes create compounds that are toxic to your brain, your cells, and your organs. And over time, this damage accumulates and can lead to serious diseases, including Alzheimer's, various types of cancer, and other degenerative conditions that rob you of your quality of life. Let me explain what happens at a cellular level when you reheat certain foods, because understanding the science will help you make better decisions moving forward. When food is cooked the first time, the heat causes proteins and other molecules to break down and recombine in specific ways. And your body knows how to digest and process these cooked molecules because humans have been cooking food for thousands of years. But when you take that same food and heat it again, especially at high temperatures like in a microwave, the molecular structure changes even further and creates entirely new compounds that your body doesn't recognize. And some of these compounds are actually classified as carcinogens, which means they have the ability to damage your DNA and trigger cancer cell growth. And other compounds are neurotoxic, meaning they cross the blood-brain barrier and damage the delicate neurons in your brain. And this is one of the pathways that can lead directly to dementia. The longer you wait to make these changes, the more damage accumulates in your body, and every day counts when it comes to protecting your brain and preventing cancer. Because once those disease processes start, they're much harder to reverse than they are to prevent in the first place. If this is meaningful to you and you want other seniors to learn about this hidden danger, hit that like button right now because it helps this information reach more people who need to hear it. Now let me tell you about the first food that becomes toxic when reheated. And this one is going to surprise you because it's something that health experts have been telling us to eat more of for years. I'm talking about spinach and other leafy greens like kale, arugula, and Swiss chard. These vegetables are incredibly healthy when you eat them fresh or when you cook them for the first time, and they're packed with vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants that your body needs. But here's what happens when you reheat them. Spinach naturally contains high levels of nitrates, which are compounds that come from the soil where the plant grows. And when you cook spinach the first time, some of these nitrates convert into nitrites, which is a normal chemical reaction. But when you reheat that cooked spinach, especially in a microwave where the heat is intense and uneven, those nitrites transform into something called nitrosamines. And nitrosamines are extremely dangerous because they're known carcinogens that have been directly linked to stomach cancer, esophageal cancer, and other digestive system cancers. According to recent studies published by the National Cancer Institute, nitrosamines are one of the most potent cancer-causing compounds that humans can be exposed to through food. And the frightening part is that you can't see them, smell them, or taste them. So you have no way of knowing that your reheated spinach has become toxic. What makes this even worse is that seniors are more vulnerable to these compounds because as we age, our digestive system produces less stomach acid and fewer protective enzymes, which means we can't neutralize these toxins as effectively as younger people can, so the damage accumulates faster in our bodies. I remember a patient, a 72-year-old woman named Margaret, who lived in a retirement community here in the Northeast, and she was incredibly health conscious and proud of the fact that she ate a big spinach salad almost every day. She would cook a large batch of spinach at the beginning of the week and reheat portions with her meals, thinking she was doing something wonderful for her body, and in many ways she was because spinach is nutritious. But after she started having persistent stomach problems and unexplained fatigue, we ran some tests and found precancerous changes in her stomach lining, and when we talked about her diet habits and I explained this reheating issue, she was devastated because she'd been unknowingly poisoning herself with the very food she thought was keeping her healthy. So here's what you need to do with spinach and leafy greens. Cook only what you're going to eat in one meal, and if you do have leftovers, eat them cold in a salad or on a sandwich, but never reheat them. You can still enjoy all the nutritional benefits of these vegetables, you just need to change how you handle them after cooking, and this simple adjustment eliminates the risk completely. The second food that becomes dangerous when reheated is chicken, and this is a big problem because chicken is one of the most commonly consumed proteins in America, and it's affordable, versatile, and available everywhere from Walmart to your local grocery store, and many seniors rely on chicken as their primary protein source because it's easier to chew than red meat, and it's recommended for heart health. But here's what most people don't know. Chicken has a very specific protein structure that changes dramatically when it's reheated, and this creates compounds that are extremely hard on your digestive system and can lead to serious problems over time. When you cook chicken the first time, the proteins denature, which is a fancy way of saying they unfold and recombine into a form that your body can digest. But when you take that cooked chicken and heat it up again, especially if you're using a microwave or reheating it quickly at high heat, the protein structure changes again and becomes much more difficult for your digestive enzymes to break down. And what happens is that this partially digested protein sits in your intestines and ferments. And this fermentation process creates toxins that damage the lining of your gut. And a damaged gut lining leads to something called leaky gut syndrome, where toxins and undigested food particles leak into your bloodstream. And once these toxins are in your blood, they travel throughout your body, including to your brain. And this is one of the mechanisms that contributes to brain inflammation and cognitive decline. Research from Johns Hopkins University has shown that chronic gut inflammation and leaky gut syndrome are significant risk factors for developing Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. And the connection makes sense when you understand that your gut and your brain are constantly communicating through what scientists call the gut-brain axis. So when your gut is inflamed and damaged, it sends inflammatory signals to your brain. And over years and decades, this chronic inflammation literally shrinks your brain and kills neurons. Plus, reheated chicken can harbor bacteria even if it was refrigerated properly, because the reheating process doesn't always bring the internal temperature high enough to kill all the bacteria that might have started growing during storage. And food poisoning from chicken can be life-threatening for seniors, especially if you have a weakened immune system or underlying health conditions. The solution here is straightforward. If you want to cook chicken in advance for meal prep, which is totally fine and I actually encourage it, you need to either eat it cold in chicken salad or on top of a fresh salad. Or if you absolutely must have it warm, you should reheat it very slowly and gently on the stovetop with some added liquid like broth or water, and make sure it reaches an internal temperature of at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit, which you can check with a food thermometer. And honestly, in most cases, it's better to just cook fresh chicken for each meal if you can manage it, because the taste is better and you eliminate all these risks completely. Now, let me share with you a simple protocol that you can use to safely enjoy foods that are typically problematic when reheated. And this is something I've recommended to hundreds of my patients, and it works beautifully. I call it the Cook Fresh, Eat Cold protocol, and it's designed specifically for seniors who want to meal prep efficiently while protecting their health. Here's how it works. For the ingredients you'll need, whatever proteins or vegetables you want to prepare. Some quality storage containers, preferably glass because plastic can leach chemicals, especially when you're storing hot food. Some fresh herbs and spices, and healthy fats like olive oil or avocado oil. For preparation, you cook your proteins and vegetables in single-serving portions, so each container has exactly 1 meal's worth of food, and you let everything cool to room temperature before you seal the containers and put them in the refrigerator. And this is important because sealing hot food creates condensation, which promotes bacterial growth. For measurements, you want to use about 4 to 6 ounces of protein per serving for seniors, because that's typically enough without being too much for older digestive systems to handle comfortably. And you can add as many non-starchy vegetables as you want, because those are always beneficial, and they're low in calories, which helps with weight management. How to use this protocol is simple. When you're ready to eat, you take out your container and you eat everything cold or at room temperature. And you dress it up with fresh ingredients like a handful of mixed greens, some cherry tomatoes, a drizzle of olive oil, maybe some lemon juice or vinegar, and some fresh herbs like basil or cilantro. And what you end up with is basically a composed salad that's delicious, satisfying, and completely safe because nothing has been reheated. You can also make cold grain bowls with quinoa or brown rice that you cooked earlier, add your cold protein and vegetables, and top it with a flavorful dressing. And these cold meals are actually perfect for American summers when it's too hot to eat warm food anyway, and they're refreshing and light, which is often what our bodies crave as we get older. The third food that becomes toxic when reheated is rice. And this one is particularly dangerous because rice is a staple food in so many cultures, including Asian American communities, and it's also popular among health-conscious Americans who are trying to eat more whole grains. And the problem with rice isn't just about reheating, it actually starts with how you store it after cooking. Rice contains spores of a bacterium called Bacillus cereus, and these spores survive the cooking process even when you cook rice properly. And when cooked, rice sits at room temperature for more than an hour or two. These spores germinate and multiply rapidly, and they produce toxins that can cause severe food poisoning with symptoms like vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal cramps. And for seniors, these symptoms can be dangerous because dehydration happens quickly and can lead to hospitalization. But even if you refrigerate your rice immediately after cooking, which you should always do, reheating that rice can still be problematic because the reheating process doesn't destroy the toxins that may have already formed. And more importantly, reheating rice changes its starch structure in a way that makes it much harder to digest. And this can lead to blood sugar spikes that are particularly harmful if you're dealing with diabetes or prediabetes, which affects millions of American seniors. From a medical perspective, resistant starch forms when rice is cooled and then reheated. And while some resistant starch can be beneficial for gut health when it's consumed in controlled amounts, the kind that forms in reheated rice is problematic because it ferments in your colon and produces excessive gas, bloating, and discomfort. And it can also feed harmful bacteria in your gut, which throws off your microbiome balance. And an imbalanced microbiome is linked to everything from obesity to depression to autoimmune diseases. Write in the comments, have you been reheating rice regularly? How often do you meal prep with rice? Share your experience because your comment might help someone else realize they need to make a change. The best approach with rice is to cook only what you need for one meal. And if you're cooking for just yourself, that might mean cooking just half a cup of dry rice, which gives you about 1.5 cups of cooked rice, and that's plenty for one person. If you do end up with leftover rice, you should refrigerate it immediately within 1 hour of cooking, and you can keep it for 1 day maximum. And when you're ready to use it, eat it cold in a rice salad with lots of fresh vegetables and a vinaigrette dressing, or use it to make fried rice where you're adding lots of fresh ingredients and cooking everything together at high heat for just a few minutes, which is different from simply reheating plain rice in the microwave. The fourth food that turns toxic when reheated is mushrooms, and this is another one that surprises people because mushrooms are considered a superfood, and they're recommended for everything from immune support to brain health. And fresh mushrooms truly are wonderful for you because they contain compounds that fight inflammation, support your immune system, and may even help prevent cancer. But once you cook mushrooms, their protein structure becomes very delicate and unstable. And if you reheat cooked mushrooms, those proteins break down into compounds that can cause serious digestive upset and may even be toxic to your liver. Mushrooms are about 90% water, and when you cook them, that water evaporates and the cell walls break down. And this releases enzymes that start to digest the mushroom from the inside. And this process continues even after cooking is done. And if you store cooked mushrooms in the refrigerator and then reheat them, you're essentially eating partially decomposed mushroom protein, and your body reacts to this as if it's a toxin. And many people experience nausea, stomach cramps, and diarrhea within hours of eating reheated mushrooms. What's particularly concerning for seniors is that mushrooms can accumulate heavy metals from the soil where they grow. And when you reheat mushrooms, these heavy metals become more bioavailable, which means your body absorbs them more easily. And heavy metals like cadmium and lead are neurotoxic, and they accumulate in your brain tissue over time. And this contributes to cognitive decline and may accelerate the development of Alzheimer's disease. And you don't need any additional toxic burden in your body, especially as you're getting older and your detoxification systems aren't working as efficiently as they used to. The solution is simple. Eat your mushrooms fresh, or if you cook them, eat them all in one sitting and don't save leftovers. And if you absolutely love mushrooms and want to include them in your meal prep, you can slice them raw and add them to your salad containers, and they'll stay fresh for several days in the refrigerator. And when you're ready to eat, you can sauté just those raw mushrooms quickly or eat them raw, which is actually perfectly safe and nutritious with varieties like button mushrooms or cremini mushrooms. If you want access to exclusive content, more detailed recipes, and personalized advice that goes even deeper than what I can share in these videos, consider becoming a channel member, because there I share specific meal plans designed for seniors, shopping lists organized by store sections, so you can find everything easily at Walgreens or CVS or your local grocery store. And I answer questions directly from members about their individual health situations. The fifth and final food that becomes dangerous when reheated is eggs. And this includes anything made with eggs like quiches, frittatas, egg casseroles, and even egg-fried rice. And the reason eggs are problematic when reheated has to do with how egg proteins respond to temperature changes. When you cook an egg, the proteins coagulate and form a solid structure. And this is why liquid eggs become firm when you scramble them or fry them. But when you take those cooked eggs and reheat them, the proteins denature a second time and release compounds that can be toxic. And one of these compounds is hydrogen sulfide, which is the same gas that gives rotten eggs their distinctive smell. And even in small amounts, hydrogen sulfide is toxic to your cells and particularly harmful to your nervous system. Doctors explain that hydrogen sulfide interferes with cellular respiration, which is the process your cells use to create energy. And when your cells can't produce energy efficiently, everything in your body starts to break down. And your brain cells are especially vulnerable because they require enormous amounts of energy to function. And this is why exposure to these compounds over time contributes to brain fog, memory problems, and eventual cognitive decline. Science has already shown that reheated eggs can also contain oxidized cholesterol, which is much more dangerous than regular cholesterol, because oxidized cholesterol doesn't just clog your arteries, It actually damages the arterial walls and triggers inflammation throughout your cardiovascular system. And this increases your risk of heart attack and stroke dramatically. And for seniors who may already have some degree of cardiovascular disease, adding oxidized cholesterol from reheated eggs is like pouring gasoline on a fire. I had a patient named Robert, a 68-year-old retired postal worker who loved making a big egg casserole on Sundays and reheating slices throughout the week for breakfast. And he thought he was being smart and efficient, and in some ways he was because meal prep is good, but he started developing severe indigestion and acid reflux, and his cholesterol numbers were climbing even though he was taking medication. And when we discussed his eating habits and I explained about reheated eggs, he made the switch to cooking fresh eggs each morning, which only takes 5 minutes, and within a month his reflux was gone and his cholesterol levels started improving. The solution with eggs is to always cook them fresh, and I know that might seem inconvenient, but eggs cook so quickly that it really doesn't add much time to your morning routine, and the difference in taste and safety is absolutely worth it. You can have scrambled eggs ready in 3 minutes, a fried egg in 2 minutes, and even a small omelet in less than 5 minutes. And these are all much safer and healthier than reheated eggs from earlier in the week. Now let me explain how these 5 foods work together to create a cumulative, toxic burden in your body. Because it's not just about avoiding 1 or 2 of these foods. It's about understanding the bigger picture of how repeated exposure to these toxins affects your long-term health. Every time you eat one of these reheated foods, your liver has to work to detoxify the harmful compounds, and your immune system has to respond to the inflammation they cause, and your brain has to cope with the neurotoxic effects. And when you're doing this day after day, week after week, year after year, your body's defenses get worn down and eventually they can't keep up. And that's when disease takes hold. Think about it this way. Your body is like a bucket, and every toxic exposure adds water to that bucket. And as long as the bucket isn't full, you might not notice any symptoms. But once that bucket overflows, suddenly you're dealing with serious health problems like cancer, dementia, heart disease, and diabetes. And the tragic part is that these diseases didn't develop overnight. They were building up slowly over decades because of daily habits that seemed harmless at the time. But here's the good news, and this is what I want you to really hear. You can change this starting today, and your body has an incredible ability to heal itself when you remove the sources of toxicity and start giving it what it needs to thrive. You don't have to live with the fear of developing cancer or dementia, and you don't have to accept cognitive decline as an inevitable part of aging, because it's not inevitable. It's largely preventable when you make informed choices about how you prepare and consume your food. Or, let me give you some practical strategies that you can implement immediately to protect yourself. First, adopt a cook fresh mentality, where you're cooking smaller portions more frequently rather than making huge batches that sit in your refrigerator. And I know this might seem like more work, but honestly, once you get into a rhythm, it becomes second nature. And the quality of your meals improves dramatically because fresh food simply tastes better. Second, invest in a good set of glass storage containers so you can see what's inside and you can safely store foods without worrying about chemicals leaching from plastic. And label everything with the date you cooked it so you know exactly how long it's been in there, and make a rule for yourself that nothing stays in your refrigerator for more than 3 days maximum. Third, embrace cold meals and salads, especially during warmer months, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with eating cold protein on top of fresh greens with a delicious dressing. And in fact, this is how many of the healthiest populations around the world eat. And it's refreshing, light, easy to digest, and completely safe. Fourth, if you're someone who really struggles with cooking every day because of arthritis or fatigue or mobility issues, consider using a meal delivery service specifically designed for seniors where fresh meals are delivered to your door already prepared. And yes, this costs more than cooking yourself, but your health is worth the investment, and many of these services accept Medicare Advantage benefits or offer senior discounts. If this video has opened your eyes to these hidden dangers in your kitchen and you found this information valuable, hit that like button one more time, because I want to make sure this message reaches as many seniors as possible across America, from the retirement communities in Florida to the small towns across the Midwest to the suburbs of California, because everyone deserves to know the truth about food safety and how to protect themselves from preventable diseases. Let me also address something important. You might be wondering if you've already done permanent damage by reheating these foods for years. And the answer is that while some damage may have occurred, your body is remarkably resilient and has the ability to repair itself when you stop the toxic exposures. And I've seen countless patients reverse inflammatory conditions, improve their cognitive function, and reduce their cancer risk simply by making these kinds of dietary changes. So it's never too late to start, and every healthy choice you make from this moment forward is helping your body heal. Another question people ask is whether certain reheating methods are safer than others. And the truth is that microwaves are generally the worst because they heat food unevenly, and they can create hotspots where chemical reactions happen more rapidly. And stovetop reheating with some added liquid is slightly better because the heat is more gentle and even. But honestly, the safest approach is just to avoid reheating these specific 5 foods altogether, regardless of the method you use. You deserve a better life than one where you're unknowingly poisoning yourself with foods that should be nourishing you. And you deserve to maintain your mental clarity, your energy, your independence, and your health well into your 80s and 90s and beyond. And these simple changes in how you handle food are one of the most powerful ways you can take control of your health destiny. Share this video with someone you care about, whether it's your spouse, your children, your friends from church, or your neighbors in your community, because this information could literally save their life or prevent them from developing a devastating disease. And wouldn't it be wonderful to know that you helped protect someone you love by sharing this knowledge? Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos where I'll be sharing more critical health information specifically designed for seniors, covering topics like how to lower your blood pressure naturally, foods that protect your heart, supplements that actually work versus ones that are a waste of money, and so much more.